Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and welcome to our closing keynote for the 2014 Global Education Conference, our 5th annual conference. We've had 250 sessions, 30 keynotes. What an incredible week, an exhausting but incredible week, and what a way to finish it off with Maureen McLaughlin. Maureen, welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Thanks for managing the technology so well, Maureen. Thanks to our sponsors and supporters. Special thanks to Iron USA, a longtime supporter of the conference, and the Global Campaign for Education. Ed Gregor is here, and we express appreciation to him personally as well. We have other fine partners. They're listed here. We appreciate them all and really love that they help make this conference a free event for educators around the world, educators and students. So for those of you participating live, you can click on the star icon to the left of the map. There's a toolkit of icons there. It's the second one down, the star icon. Click on it, and click on it again, and click on the map. Do put a note in the chat and let us know the time, the temperature, where you're located, anything that would be fun for us to know. If you're on a mobile device, you will not see the map. Well, no, you should see the map. So let's see, Mary. There's no reason you would not see the map, but maybe there's a little bit of a glitch. Mary, if you continue not to see slides as we move forward, just log out and log back in again. And wherever you're participating from, or if you're listening to the recording, we do sure appreciate your taking part in this. Maureen McLaughlin is Senior Advisor to the Secretary and Director of International Affairs at the U.S. Department of Education. She leads the U.S. Department of Education's international activities, including the development of the department's first international strategy, bringing 3 decades of experience working on education policy and management issues in the United States and internationally. From 2002 to 2010, she worked at the World Bank as lead education specialist and education sector manager on education issues in the Europe and Central Asia region. Prior to joining the World Bank, Maureen was an Ian Oxford Public Fellow in New Zealand. Between 1988 and 2002, she held several senior positions at the U.S. Department of Education, including Acting Assistant Secretary for Post-Secondary Education at the beginning of 2 new administrations, and Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy Planning and Innovation after 1993. Maureen, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for the introduction, and I'm really delighted to be here. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Again, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm joined also by one of my team, Becky Miller, who's an International Affairs Specialist and developed the PowerPoint we're using today, and also works closely with me on the issues that we'll be particularly focusing on today. Thanks also to Ed for inviting us to join this event. And for us, International Education Week is a really important week. And the fact that this is the 15th International Education Week is especially exciting for us. This is our second to last event of the week. So we're really, again, looking forward to a discussion with all of you on our topic, which is championing international education priorities. So let me first give a quick outline of what I'm going to talk about today, and then we'll hear from the Secretary about International Education Week. First, I'm going to give a quick overview of our strategy. As Steve mentioned in the introduction, it is the first strategy that the department has developed for international. And then I will quickly focus on one particular piece of work we're doing, which is the Global Education First initiative, and the U.S. becoming a champion country to support that initiative, what it means, what the challenges are abroad, what the U.S. Department of Education is doing in leading by example, which is our role in the champion country, and then moving forward, what's next? What do we see as the sort of path and issues going forward? So thank you. Now we're going to hear from the Secretary, a short taped message for International Education Week.
So the way this will work is I'm going to put the link in the chat, but we're also going to do a web tour. If for some reason the video doesn't come up on the web tour, just click quickly on that link in the chat.
Hello, I'm Duncan, the U.S. Secretary of Education, and this year marks the 15th anniversary of International Education Week.
So that's just a quick message from the Secretary. We also have, if you're interested, 2 blogs talking about our international work in honor of International Education Week. One is from the Secretary, and that is on our Department of Education website. And another is one that is on Ed Week. Asia Society asked me to kind of reflect back on the last 15 years. And so there is a blog that I wrote that's on the Ed Week Global Learning Partnership blog. So let's move into a quick discussion of our strategy, succeeding globally through international education and engagement. Becky just put a link up for the strategy if at some point you want to look at it in more detail. But this graphic really captures the essence of our strategy. It's the first strategy the department has had for international. We released it 2 years ago in International Education Week, although we've really been using it to guide our work for the year or so before that. We developed this through extensive consultations externally and internally through a working group with senior officers from all of our different departments. And the strategy is very much one that links what we do internationally to what we're doing domestically. So we see our international work at the Department of Education inextricably linked with our domestic priorities. And the 2 key goals that we have are to strengthen the U.S. education system and advance the U.S. international priorities. We believe we can do both of those at the same time. We have 3 key objectives to support those goals, and they are to increase the global competencies of all U.S. students, and I emphasize all because it really is important to see that this is not a luxury, but something that everybody needs. Secondly, to learn from other countries to improve our education system. And third, to engage in education diplomacy. The third objective is where we'll focus today, but before we go into the focus on education diplomacy and to particularly the Global Education First initiative, I would like to touch upon the increase in global competencies and learning from other countries. Before I move into that discussion, I would like to emphasize that while this is the first strategy we've had at the Department of Education, the first explicit strategy, it really builds on a foundation of work that began in 2000 when then President Clinton issued an executive order for agencies to work together more on international education and started International Education Week. At the same time, then Secretary Riley coined the term education diplomacy in a conversation with then Secretary Madeleine Albright, highlighting that education should be seen as a vital and important way to expand U.S. diplomatic efforts. So objective 1 is increasing the global competencies of all U.S. students. What does it mean to be globally competent? Well, we really adopted a strategy that had been, or a definition that had been developed by the Asia Society together with the chief state school officers. And we did this after consultation and discussion with many people. And really what we see is that global competencies are 21st century skills applied to the world. And this graphic, again, captures that. The core in the center is the content of what people are studying. And it's understanding the world through that content. And then being able to investigate the world, to be able to recognize other perspectives, to be able to communicate those ideas, and then to take action. And the importance of students being globally competent is that that's the world that we're in. We need students who can understand differences, can work with people from different backgrounds, can work across borders of countries to address global challenges, for instance, climate change. And so this is a key piece of what we see as the definition of global competency. And last year, in International Education Week, we partnered with Asia Society, the Longview Foundation, and SAS for the release of a tool that they had developed called Mapping the Nation, an interactive map that includes economic, demographic, and education indicators for every state and county in this country, to be able to see how globally connected states and counties are. And really these data allow you to be able to analyze the situation in your local area, and that the data can then inform and advance the work that's happening at the state, national, and local level for education reform and for workforce development. So I see this tool as one that's really important for people to be able to use in dialogues with the local school board, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the school system, again, at the state and local level. Our second objective is learning from other countries. And this is an area where we've spent quite a bit of time over the last couple of years about learning from other countries to improve our education system at home. But I also want to stress that the learning from other countries is also learning with other countries, that it very much is a two-way conversation, that as we engage with other countries about what they're doing and what we can learn, they're also learning and working with us. So learning from other countries includes a couple of key pieces. One is international benchmarking, and we participate in a variety of international assessments so that we can see how our students compare to what's happening in other countries. And the thing that you've heard of most of these surveys, I'm sure, TIMSS, PEARLS, PISA. And this past year, 2 new surveys that the U.S. hadn't participated in before, PIACS, which is the Program for International Assessment of Adult Competencies and Skills, and TALIS, the Teaching and Learning International Survey, that asked teachers and school leaders, principals, what their view is of their profession and their work, so that we could get a better idea of teachers' voice and teachers' perceptions of their jobs and how that compares across countries. Just yesterday, we held a session as part of International Education Week where we included a discussion online by video with the UK and looked at what was happening in the UK for teachers according to the TALIS data and to the US, and it was really a remarkable conversation. If you're interested, there's more information on our website about the TALIS data, and also a blog about what we see as the key takeaways for the US, and the video of yesterday's discussion would be available as well. And the exchanging ideas with other countries occurs on a bilateral basis as well as a multilateral basis. So some of our work is sitting down around a table with two countries at the same time, or sitting down and around a table with multiple countries at the same time. The photo that you see here is one of the multilateral engagements. It's the International Summit on the Teaching Profession, which Secretary Duncan started along with domestic and international partners in 2011 to bring together high-performing and rapidly improving countries around the world to learn together about how to elevate and transform the teaching profession. So this is something which was greeted with such interest, and the learning was really appreciated that countries asked us to do it a second year, and then it has now become an annual event. I call it an International Community of Practice, where then the Netherlands hosted, followed by New Zealand, and this current year will be hosted by Canada. And our third objective is engaging in education diplomacy. And this covers, again, a wide variety of pieces of work. It includes cooperation with other countries. So the photo you see here, in fact, is a discussion between our Deputy Secretary and the Vice Minister for China. We work on quite a few issues with China. We have a state-provincial education leaders dialogue where we bring together chiefs from the U.S. and provincial leaders from China and jointly engage in discussions of issues of mutual interest. We've looked at how to turn around low-performing schools. This coming year, the topics will focus on teacher professional development and assessment. We work with many countries in a bilateral way, for instance, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Germany, just to mention a few. We also have a very strong and vibrant international visitors program. International visitors come through the State Department, and they go to different agencies to learn more about particular topic areas. And I've been told on a number of occasions that one of the largest programs outside of the State Department is in fact the education program. So last year we had 1,500 international visitors from 91 countries to come to the department to talk with and learn with our staff. This is something that I think is important for developing long-term relationships between countries and working relationships. We also work on academic mobility, which is the flow of students and faculty and administrators across borders. And this is a big issue: student study abroad, student exchanges, much of which has been the emphasis for the State Department during International Education Week, where they are really encouraging study abroad, where they released the Open Doors data on Monday, the data that shows what's happening worldwide in study abroad. Those data show that for the U.S., the number of students studying abroad increased by 2% last year. We'd like to see it increase by even more, but by 2%. And the number of students coming from other countries to the U.S. increased by 8%, a larger increase in the incoming flow than the outgoing flow. So then international fora. We engage in a variety of multilateral international fora, including OECD, APEC, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, the Organization of American States, and UNESCO. So let me move in discussing UNESCO really into the main focus of today's topic, which is the Global Education First Initiative and what it means to be a champion country. The Global Education First Initiative was launched by the Secretary General of the UN. He talked about how he personally saw what happened to Korea when a very heavy emphasis was placed on education and increasing both the quality and the access of education, what it meant and what it did for Korea as a country. So he launched this initiative in September 2012, really as a way to push harder for countries to be able to achieve the Millennium Development Goals, which expire at the end of 2015. And in this initiative, there are 3 key pieces. First is to put every child in school. At this point, while there have been enormous increases in the number of children in primary education around the world, there still are 57 million children out of school. The second is to improve the quality of learning, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but in some cases, the push for universal primary school enrollment didn't necessarily mean that people had good, strong learning outcomes. And the third is to foster global citizenship. In many ways, the fostering of global citizenship is very similar on an international basis to what we're talking about in the U.S. about global competencies. So, what is a champion country? A champion country are countries that, in essence, sign on and are approved by the Secretary General to be a group of member states for the UN that serve as a champion country to galvanize support and visibility for the initiative among governments at home or governments abroad. And as you can see, there are a number of champion countries, quite a variety of countries that are there. And the U.S. joined. And for us as a champion country, we are a team. It is led by the State Department with USAID and the Department of Education as the full team for the champion country efforts in the U.S. on the Global First Initiative issues. And the role of champion countries are to advocate for the Global Education First objectives, to provide support for those objectives, and to lead by example. We're going to hear now a quick message from Secretary Duncan, who had been asked to tape a message to be put on the UN Global Education First website about what it meant to the U.S. to be a champion country.
So we'll do the same thing here. I'll put the link in the chat. Maureen will ask you to turn your microphone off for a second. I'm going to put the link in the web tour. If it doesn't come up in the web tour, click on the link in the chat.
So that was a quick summary and message from the Secretary about why the U.S. joined and the fact that each of our departments has certain responsibilities in terms of what we're doing as a champion country. So before I talk explicitly about the role for the U.S., which is the leading by example, just want to quickly touch upon the challenges that are facing us globally in education and are what motivated the UN Secretary General to create the Global Education First GEFI initiative. The Millennium Development Goals that I'm sure you're all familiar with were established by the UN in 2000 and ratified by 189 member countries. They include development goals in a variety of areas, and one of them is education. And as you can see by the red circle on the second Millennium Development Goal, it is to achieve universal primary school enrollment for all countries. And but that is to achieve universal primary school enrollment by the end of 2015. As you can see on the next slide that comes from the UN, primary school enrollment has increased quite substantially over the period of time since the Millennium Development Goals were adopted, but there still is a long way to go. So 90% of countries have achieved the universal primary school enrollment, but there are still 58 million students who are out of school. In addition, a big piece is that not only are students in or out of school, but the issue of the quality of the learning. And in many cases, even the students who are in school turn out that as they look at the quality of education, they really are still not able to read or do pretty basic mathematics. So moving to universal primary school enrollment is really necessary, but in and of itself, without a focus on quality, it won't get us to where we all want to be, which is a good, strong learning and teaching for every child around the globe. I certainly found at my work at World Bank, which Steve mentioned when he introduced me, one of the countries that I worked in quite extensively was Turkey. And Turkey had done a phenomenal job of getting to virtually 100% primary school enrollment. They really had done a really phenomenal job of that. But as they participated in PISA, they discovered that, in fact, the quality of education hadn't increased in the ways that they would have liked along with the expansion of enrollment. And so we will see, as we move into the discussion about where we go next, that quality is very much on the minds of everybody involved in this work right now. The quality, the learning outcomes is really important. And of course, teachers. Teachers are clearly important and essential to be able to provide high quality education in the U.S. as well as around the world. And so this graphic here from UNESCO talks about trained teachers and the fact that there is a very persistent shortage worldwide. And the estimate from UNESCO is that in a third of countries, less than 75% of the teachers are trained. So there's an issue about numbers of teachers, and there's an issue about the training and the quality of the teachers. Teacher certification or teacher preparation varies widely around the world, so you sometimes have to be really careful how you compare across countries. But there's no question that increasing the quality and the preparation of teachers worldwide, as well as the numbers, is really important. According to UNESCO, they estimate that 4 million teachers would be needed to be hired worldwide in order to achieve universal primary school enrollment by 2015. So clearly a big issue. Another piece of the work around the Millennium Development Goals, in addition to achieving universal primary school enrollment, is the issue of gender parity. And in many countries, there's a very big difference between the percentage of girls who are in school and the percentage of boys. So there's been a big push across countries and as part of the Education for All efforts to increase the number of girls who are in school at primary education and also at secondary education. At the Global Education First session, alongside the UN General Assembly in September in New York City, the First Lady gave a moving speech about not only the issue of improving quality of education for everyone, but of also really being careful worldwide to be sure that there is gender equity and that girls are having the same opportunities as boys. So that comes to what's our role as a U.S. champion country. And we have in our strategy that we, so based on the strong belief, supported also by evidence, that education is a win-win for all of us, that we will be better off if education access and quality and equity improves around the world as well as within our country. And that a better educated world is a safer world, a healthier world and a more prosperous world. And so the U.S. Has many similar issues as the issues we just talked about for countries around the world, issues of quality of education, issues of equal access, issues of high quality teaching. So we are working and addressing these issues on a daily basis in classrooms around the country, in schools around the country, at the local, national, state levels. These issues are being addressed. So we're working on them. We're facing similar challenges as other countries, albeit perhaps not always at the same level, but we are addressing similar issues. And so what we can do as a champion country is to be able to share work that has happened in this country that has been successful or that's in development that is addressing similar issues for other countries. So right here is a quick quote from Secretary Duncan about improving education for all students. Every child deserves an education that will prepare her for the future. Yes, knowledge matters, but not in a vacuum. It has to be connected with inquiry and problem solving, fluency with critical thinking, readiness for lifelong learning. That's what will matter. That's what my wife and I want for our children. And Secretary Duncan firmly believes that this is what is needed around the world. This is a graphic of what we're doing at the federal level, and I think it really, without going into detail on every single piece of the graphic, I think it does help to really show that we're addressing similar issues as the ones that are motivating and are important for the Global Education First initiative. Across the top, which are the outcomes that are desired, are access, equity, quality, and learning outcomes. And so everything that we're working on is geared towards those same goals that you see in the Global Education First initiative. And it very much is a pipeline, starting with early childhood, all the way through being college and career ready. And early childhood and early learning has been documented over and over again about how important that is, particularly for students who are more at risk. But let me quickly just touch on a couple of pieces of what we're doing. One is high expectations, and that in the U.S. the development of internationally benchmarked college and career-ready standards is important in terms of people around the country having the same benchmark, and that more than 40 states have adopted and are implementing Common Core state-developed standards. Standards represent goals for students. They aren't prescriptions, and the decisions about curricula and how to implement them are things that are happening at the state and local level in classrooms and in schools. Federal policies encourage the high expectations, but we don't touch upon what the standards are explicitly or on curricula because that is very much a state and local responsibility. High quality preschool. I mentioned at the beginning that focusing more attention on early learning is absolutely essential, particularly for students who come from more at-risk backgrounds. And there is well-documented research, both in the U.S. and around the world, about the value of high-quality early learning or early support, including health, including education, and that these are really, again, probably the best investments a country can make. I know that there was a big study when I was in Turkey that was done that came out with very strong results about the importance of early learning as well, and the country was at that time pushing to try to increase preschool. But in the U.S., we're doing that as well, and that the high quality preschool development grants are something that we're emphasizing. And the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education are working on these preschool development grants together. It's really an important joint partnership of the two agencies because, as you may know, or may not, Health and Human Services is responsible for the Head Start program, but we're responsible for much more of what's happening in the schools. And so the bringing together of the two departments to work on supporting states to build, develop, and expand high-quality preschool programs is really a big step forward. And just this week, the President signed the Child Care and Development Block Grant Act of 2014 into law. And the law makes statutory changes focused on better balancing the dual purposes of the Child Care and Development Fund to promote families' economic self-sufficiency by making child care more affordable and fostering healthy child development and school success by improving the quality of early learning and after-school programs. And it supports improving definitions of family-friendly policies and making sure that there's transparent information for people to make decisions about what child care policies or child care options are available to them. Early learning and child care seems to be one of the areas that are supported on a much more bipartisan basis than perhaps some other issues because it is so important, and I think businesses, schools, parents, children all see the importance. Then we talked earlier about teaching and about the role of teachers in the classroom, and that around the world there aren't enough teachers or enough trained teachers to be able to support the expansion of both quality and access in education. And in the U.S. we had some similar issues about access to great teaching. And this graphic here shows the differences in terms of access to effective, high-quality teachers. And what you see is that in middle school, the percentage of students who have less access to effective teachers is shown in this graph. So you see that, for instance, in middle school English, at low poverty schools, about 35% of the schools do not have the effective teachers and highly effective teachers compared to the high poverty. Sorry, I think I twisted that around. What it shows there is that for the highest poverty schools, they're much less likely to have an effective teacher. So, for instance, in English, it's about 12% to have a highly effective teacher, whereas at a lower poverty school, it's between 30 and 35%. So this is something that clearly is a big issue because children in low poverty schools or from at-risk backgrounds really, really need the most effective teachers possible. And there's an initiative which I don't have a slide included in here that was announced earlier this summer, and more work has been happening on it recently, that addresses the issue of educator equity. And it's called Excellent Educators for All Initiative, and it was announced in the summer by Secretary Duncan, and it really is a move to try to ensure that every student in every public school is taught by a high-quality teacher. And what this is that each state must submit to the department a complete state plan that ensures that poor and minority children are not taught at higher rates than other children by inexperienced, unqualified, or out-of-field teachers. So what it really is it's addressing this graph here and indicating that states need to put in plans that would show how is it that they are going to move to ensuring that the distribution of teachers and the quality of teachers is equal for at-risk students or more low-income students as it is for higher-income students or higher socioeconomic students. This is a major initiative. The plans from the states are due in June of 2015. The department is providing lots of technical assistance to the states as they develop their plans, and really are encouraging and again providing technical assistance to the states to do real root cause analysis. So what is the reason in your state, in your district, in your schools that the distribution of teachers isn't equal across the backgrounds of children? And so the states will come back with proposals and plans for how to move in the direction of ensuring equal access teachers. I think this is an enormously important initiative in the U.S. for helping us to have more equal access to high-quality teachers, and it could be applicable as a way of looking at the issue in other countries as well. We also have several other initiatives for teachers, one called R.E.S.P.E.C.T, which is an acronym that stands for Recognizing Educational Success, Professional Excellence, and Collaborative Teaching. And R.E.S.P.E.C.T, as well as Teach to Lead, which I'll discuss in a minute, were really influenced by much of the learning that we had in the international summits that I mentioned at the beginning. So 2 years ago, classroom teachers who were temporarily working with the Department of Education, we call them Teacher Ambassador Fellows, launched a dialogue across the country to talk with teachers about what it is that they feel they need to transform and elevate the teaching profession. And this unprecedented national dialogue resulted in the development of the R.E.S.P.E.C.T initiative. You can find this also on our website if you're interested in more detail. Also, recruiting top talent into teaching is important. What we see is that the countries around the world who have the highest student performance, most of them recruit their teachers from the top students coming out of high school, and that is something that really helps them to be able to have high-quality teachers and high-quality preparation. So the Teach Initiative, which was started in 2010, is a public-private partnership that's really focused on recruiting and retaining top talent into the profession. And retaining is as important as recruiting. And this Teach Coalition, which manages the effort, does it in a way to complement the R.E.S.P.E.C.T initiative. And so it's complementing what we heard from teachers about what they feel is needed in order to, again, elevate, enhance, and transform the teaching profession. And the U.S. Department of Education is on that board. We also have recently started a Teach to Lead initiative. So last year, in March, the Department of Education and the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards announced an initiative to really advance student outcomes by expanding opportunities for teacher leadership, particularly opportunities that would allow teachers to stay in the classroom and teach, but also to be able to have more leadership opportunities. Again, this is something we see in high-performing countries, that there are more opportunities for teachers to take on leadership roles without necessarily leaving the classroom or leaving the classroom full-time, including different teacher roles and different career ladders in particular countries. And the Teach to Lead campaign has been expanded to be a Commit to Lead, and it's an online community of teachers who are basically committing to be leaders and putting forward examples of things that they are doing to be able to take on more leadership roles as examples for others. And the U.S. is holding 3 different regional summits, regional meetings for the Teach to Lead and Commit to Lead to hear from teachers. So if any of you here are teachers in the U.S. and you would like to participate, there are, again, 3 regional summits, one in Kentucky, which is, I think, already fully subscribed, but another in Denver in January, and one in Boston in February. So if you would be interested, please go onto the department's website, and please go on to teachtolead.org, and you can sign up if you would like to participate in any of those sessions. One of the things, if you do, is you need to come with ideas for teacher leadership, and I think those are really important efforts where teachers are helping to figure out what are other ways that they can lead in a policy perspective, in a classroom perspective, in a school perspective, in a system perspective. So really to sum up, in our responsibility or in our role in the champion country of leading by example, it's really an issue of saying we face challenges together. We face very similar challenges, again, perhaps at different levels, but we face similar challenges in this country, as do many other countries around the world. And the quote that's here on this slide is about the inequities across the globe, that around the world, the 1.2 billion poorest people account for just 1% of world consumption, while the richest billion make up 72%. And the average child in a poor country performs worse academically than 95% of children in a richer country. These kinds of statistics really show the inequality on a global level, but we also have enormous inequality in this country. And so big push and a really underlying factor to everything we're doing in the Department of Education is to be able to improve equity, provide the same kinds of opportunities to everyone, provide extra assistance to students or schools that are in more at-risk areas and need additional assistance. So this inequity, which is documented, is discussed in the newspaper on a pretty regular basis, this issue of inequity and how you improve the equity of resources, how you improve the equity of outcomes for education, for jobs, is one that we're facing in the U.S. as well as others around the world. So moving forward, we talked a little bit about how the Millennium Development Goals expire at the end of 2015, so what comes next? There's lots of discussion and lots of work being done in countries and in multilateral institutions to figure out what would be next. What kinds of goals would be in the next effort. And we don't know where that will all come out, but the part that I find particularly gratifying is the fact that there seems to be enormous and emphasis and support for keeping education as an important variable. And the quote that I have here, which is Ambassador Cousins, who is the U.S. representative to the UN Economic and Social Council, summarizes where the U.S. is, and this, again, seems to match quite a bit the international perception as well. Our team strongly supports a dedicated goal on education that reflects the experience of the MDGs and improves on them. That means emphasizing equitable access, quality education, and learning outcomes across our targets in order to give girls, boys, and also adults the knowledge, skills, and tools they need to lead the lives of dignity and opportunity. So there are consultations going on now, and will continue to be consultations going on about how to move from this broad statement to more specifics. But from my own perspective and here in the Department of Education, but also from my work at the World Bank, the fact that there is such strong support in this country and around the world about being sure that learning outcomes and quality of education is in the mix, not just access, I think is enormously important. So equitable access to high quality education is really what we all support and will be moving ahead. So right now I would say open it for questions, and Steve, how do you want to proceed on this?
If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, or you can raise your virtual hand, the third icon over in the participant window. Let us know that you're interested in asking a question. But the first question is, what does high quality education mean?
Okay. High quality education is that students have the skills and the competencies that they need. So high quality education is one that has strong, positive, high outcomes for students, so that students are learning. They're learning what it is that they need for society, for global competencies, for work, for moving to the next level of education. So one of the reasons that we participate in such international assessments as TIMSS and PEARLS and PISA is because we want to see where do we as a country measure up against other countries, and how much are our students learning. There was a study done for the World Bank some number of years back, and it looked at the relationship between enrollment rates in education, so access in education, so numbers of years of education, and a country's economic situation. And it also looked at the relationship between the learning outcomes as a measure of quality of education and the country's economic situation. And what it really found is that numbers of years in and of itself do not correlate with increasing economic performance or increasing economic prosperity in the country. But incorporating in the learning outcomes, what the students really could learn and do, was highly correlated in a positive way with improving economic performance for the country. So when I talk about high quality education, we're really looking at the outcomes and students and what they can do.
Okay, we got a couple of quick questions that came in after that. The first is from Lisa. What does the U.S. being a GEFI champion country mean for U.S. funding of the Global Partnership for Education?
Thanks for that question, Ed. And so on the funding side, the U.S. Department of Education, we obviously don't provide funding for the Global Partnership on Education ourselves because we're a domestic agency, and so our role as part of the Global Education First Initiative champion country is not on the funding. But the issues for USAID funding for support are very much factored in as decisions are made in terms of support with USAID funding, where it's targeted, what level of commitments they can make in education.
Okay, next was, what is your vision about the Common Core State Standards? What is the perspective? Maybe perspective? Okay.
The Common Core State Standards, as I mentioned, are standards that were developed by the states to basically look at what is really needed in terms of learning at different levels. For students, they were developed by the states, and they also looked at what other countries were doing. So the Common Core State Standards give a high and emphasis on high expectations and high standards, and also consistency across states. And that movement of high standards and the support needed to implement the high standards in terms of preparation for teachers, for perhaps different curricula that go along with Common Core State Standards, are really very important initiatives. And again, when we look at the PISA results, one big takeaway that the Secretary had this year was that really what you see in other countries and what we see a need for here is higher expectations and higher standards, and that's really the movement of the Common Core State Standards.
Okay, Estelle asks, what do you see as the roles of parents, community organizations, and other stakeholders?
the roles of parents, community organizations, and other stakeholders are enormously important in our country as well as around the world. So this education and strong positive outcomes in education are something that is very much of a partnership. It is students, it is parents, it is teachers, it is schools, it is community organizations. I see them as enormously important and again, I think very important in this country as well as other countries. I also think it's important for parent voice, so for parents to be able to be participating in what's happening and decisions that are being made in their country about education.
Maureen, would you like me to cut it off here? We are at the top of the hour.
I'm okay to go a couple more minutes if you would like, but
we have one more question that's come in. Why don't we make that our last one? Jose wants to know, what can we, the non-member countries, do to reach some benefits of this great initiative? I'm from Mexico.
I think what the question means is a non-member country, meaning not part of Global Education First. So the initiative for Global Education First and for improving education worldwide really is something to help everyone. And so Mexico, you can benefit from much of the learning that goes on across countries, regardless of whether you're a member of the Global Education First initiative. I think that's the question. I know Mexico has, as a member of the OECD, has done a lot of work with OECD about how to improve the education system, how to increase access, how to address equity issues, and how to address quality issues as well. So all of the work that is happening about the Millennium Development Goals, or the work for what comes after the Millennium Development Goals, the post-2015 picture, as people call it, affects all countries. That discussion involves Mexico as well as the U.S. And so very, very much we're all in this together.
Maureen, let's close there. I'm clapping for you. It's hard to find the applause button in this system, but it's under the smiley face. Thank you for being our closing keynote. I'm hereby closing the conference, the 2014 Global Education Conference. Thanks to Maureen, McLaughlin. Thanks to Ed Greger for being such a support here. Thanks to all of you for attending. Maureen, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and for the participation of everybody who has been online and great questions. I see some things which say, is the PowerPoint available? I think, Ed, you will make the PowerPoint as well as the tape available. Is that right?
Yeah, you can download the PowerPoint from what's in this system. Sorry, Ed. Shall I go, or would you like to?
Go ahead, Steve. You already put it into the chat box anyway, so go ahead.
Yep, so you can go to File, Save, and then save the whiteboard as a PDF. The recording will be up. You can do it from the full recording as well at a later point in time. The MP3 and MP4 recording should be up within about a day. I just ran the numbers, and we had close to 7,500 participants through the week. So we've had a really fun, exciting week. And Maureen, thank you again.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay.
Bye, everybody. We do have a closing party. It is not an official event, but in the schedule you'll notice there's a link to a closing event. It's just to give us some emotional closure. But do join us. We'll be giving some thanks to some of our super moderators and giving you a chance to tell us what you enjoyed about the conference. Take care, everybody. Bye now.